Hope almost all the attendees have joined the session. So before we start, let me set the ground rules for today's session. You're automatically in mute today. However, you do have a question box. So during this session, if you got any questions, please post it on the question box. And by the end of the session, we'll spend some time in answering your questions. So to start with, let's have a quick intro about the company profile. Vembu Technologies is a private company founded in the year 2004, and we are profitable since 2006. We are headquartered in Chennai, India. We have 4,000 plus channel partners, and we reached more than 60,000 businesses so far. 70% of our customers are from North America, 20% from Europe, and the rest 10% from Asia Pacific region. So the agenda for today's session will be like we're going to have a quick introduction about the product, the architecture of VM replication with Vembu VMBackup, the backup transport modes we use, and various disaster recovery scenarios with Vembu's VM replication, and a quick live demo of how we do live VM replication with Vembu VMBackup. So to start with, we actually did a study about the challenges faced by the IT administrators managing data centers nowadays, and we have summarized a few of those which actually very commonly faced by most of the IT administrators. And those are how fast I can recover the data center during a disaster, or how can I rely on my replication, how can I recover a particular version at any time from a replicated data? And how do I control the exponential data growth when I replicate multiple VMs to a different site? And we're glad to announce that Wembu VM Backup is a product using which you can get back to business in less than 60 seconds after the disaster. So we provide instant recovery, or we provide instant up of the VMs back to live environment by providing a failover to the replicated VM, failback to the production host, network mapping, and doing IP remapping. So why we need Wembu VM backup? So for this question, nowadays backing up virtual servers and physical servers are typically become very expensive, and even the managing the backups of physical and virtual servers has become very difficult nowadays. So there needs to be a different approach towards backing up physical and virtual servers. And Wembu VM Backups exclusively a product designed to back up virtual and physical environments, which not only helps you to back up both environments, but it also ensures that it backs up the physical and virtual machines with the applications running inside, ensuring the applications inside those machines are consistent. And it also has optional cloud disaster recovery features in it. So to discuss in detail about the architecture of Wembu VM replication, I would like to invite Manikam, the product engineer and the master brain behind building the Wembu VM replication feature. Over to you, Manikam.
Thank you, Manoj. Hi all, I'm Manikam. I'm enjoying my life as a senior software engineer in Vembu, and I am a part of VMware team here in Vembu. And now we are talking about the Vembu VMware replication for high availability. So first of all, instead of talking about the traditional backups, now we are just talking about the high availability by using replication or some other process. Why? Because is nowadays most of the people are trying to use the most possible solutions from the technical side to achieve business continuity without any downtime, and also they are trying to avoid their manual works. So Vembu is always giving the better solutions to their customers. So to achieve business continuity without any hassle, Vembu is providing a VM replication to avoid high availability for the business critical VMs or data to the customers. So in Wembu VM replication, we are just doing a copy of uh, the business critical VMs from the source host to target host. Like you're seeing in the picture, the Vembu VM backup agent will be act as the agent between your source host and your target host. And if the customer has configured a particular VM for replication, it will just read the data from the source host and it will just create the same replica to the target DR host. So if in case of a customer in a disaster scenario, he can just directly boot up the VM from the target host and they can just use for their business continuity. And also Vembu VM backup is just doing a application aware replication process to ensure the consistency of the applications which are all running inside the VMs. And also Vembu VM backup is giving the process of failover, failback, network mapping, and IP remapping to avoid the downtime in a case of disaster. So till now we have seen about the architecture of VM replication. And in a replication process, the data transfer is the most hectic process. So to handle the data transfer in a better manner, Vembu VM backup is using 3 different transport modes to transfer the data in a better way from the source host to your target or DR host. So obviously Vembu VM backup is using the VADP APIs from VMware, and the VMware is giving the 3 different transport modes. The one is direct SAN mode, the another one is hot add mode, the final one is network mode, which is commonly known as NBD, which is actually a LAN transfer. So Vembu VM backup will automatically detect the environment of the ESXi host and the Vembu VM backup agent, and it will just switch over to the transport modes, which is very opt for the environment. So the user don't have any work to choose the transport modes. In that, first we'll just see about the direct SAN transport mode. If the user is having an ESXi host which is using the data store from a SAN storage, it will be a very opt scenario to use the SAN mode of transport to achieve the better performance in replication process. So to achieve this SAN mode of transport, the user will need to just have the Vembu backup agent will be installed in a physical machine, and also the physical machine will need to be have the access to the SAN storage to directly read the data from the SAN instead of doing the read through the ESXi host. So if they are reading the data directly from the SAN storage instead of doing it from the ESXi host, we are just leaving the LAN free. So mostly it is called as LAN free data transfer. So, and also if the target host is also having the SAN access, or the data store in the target host also be in a SAN storage, the same SAN storage means the writing data to the DR host will also be LAN free. So it will be a very faster replication comparing to other 2 modes. As I said earlier, the transport mode will be chosen by the Vembu VM backup agent by the intelligence. So the user don't want to do any manual work to choose the transport modes. That's all about direct SAN mode, and the second one is hot add transport mode. If the user to achieve the hot add transport mode, the Vembu VM backup agent will need to be installed inside a virtual machine, and also the virtual machine will need to be resides in the ESXi host from where we are going to do a replication, that is the source ESXi host. So once you have installed the Vembu VM backup agent inside a particular VM, in the host. While doing a replication, the Wembu VM backup agent will attach the disk from the source machine to the agent machine. And while reading the data, it will not read the data through the ESXi. Instead of doing that, it will just read the data directly from the attached disk. So instead of doing a read from through the ESXi host, it is directly reading the data from the attached disk. So here also we are just avoiding the read from LAN. So it is also commonly known as a LAN-free transport mode. So by avoiding the LAN read, we are just achieving the better performance, and it will just directly transfer the data to the target host. So that's all about the hotter transport mode. So the final one is network transport mode, which is commonly known as NBD. And if the Wembu VM backup agent will first of all will try to check the environment for SAN transport mode. If the SAN transport mode will not be available, means it will just switch over to hotter transport mode. If the environment is not opt for hotter mode also, means it will just switch over to the network transport mode, and mainly it is a LAN transport mode. The basic transport mode is NBD. So it will just directly read the data from the ESXi host, and it will just transfer the data to the target host through the LAN. So comparing to the other two modes, it will be bit lower and it will be a consistent one. So that's all about the transport modes, and now we are going to see about the disaster recovery scenarios. So once you have done with your replication and you're in a disaster scenario, you need to just boot up your virtual machine without any downtime. To achieve this kind of process, Vembu VM backup is just giving a failover process, which will actually do a boot of your target VM, which has been replicated from the source, in a less than a second, because our application is not having any dependency to boot the VM, and it will just, the booting time will be depends on the operating system, because while doing a failover, the application will just do a IP mapping and network mapping, which will be done less than a second, and you can just boot up your machine without any dependency with the application. So while doing a failover, the user can just select a particular restore timestamp. As you are seeing in the image, in the right side image, you can able to see a particular timestamp has been marked in green. So this is a recovery point which has been created while doing a replication. And in the failover process, if the user wants to boot up that particular timestamp, means Vembu VM backup will just do a boot of that particular timestamp to achieve the business continuity without any data loss and downtime. And also, failover is will be done in a temporary manner, because if the user wants to use that particular timestamp or that particular VM for a temporary purpose, and he is just going to move to the production host after some time, means Wembu is just giving the flexibility to do that. So he can just do a boot of VM for temporary purpose, and he can just use that VM for business continuity. After a hour or two, or a day or two, or a week or two, he can use that particular VM. And once his work has been done, he can just do a undo failover to get back to the replication mode. So then the source VM will need to be replicated to the target as a continuous incremental process. And also, Vembu VM backup is giving a permanent failover process, which will be used to, if the user wants to uh, use the replicated VM, that failover VM, as a permanent server for his business continuity. Means he can just able to do a permanent failover process. Permanent failover process will just consolidate all the recovery points which has been created in the target host, and it will just boot up the VM with the network mapped and IP mapped. So he will not just have any time delay to use that particular VM. So it will be ready cooked. So he can just use the VM as it is. So after doing a failover process, we are just having a failback process. Failback is a process to get back your VM to the production host because a user has done the failover in the DR host. And if the user wants to avoid the resource overhead in DR host, and he is going to use his production host to achieve his business continuity, means after doing a failover, he can able to do a failback to the production host to get back that corrupted VM to the production host to continue his business without any delay. So if the user wants to do a failback, means he can just be able to do through the Wembu VM backup user console. And once he has done failback process, he can able to do a undo failback to continue his replication process from the source if the source is available. And also he can able to do a failback process to a new location or to new host to take a copy of that replicated VM to continue his business from a very new location. So if the user wants to commit the failback, that means if the user don't want to continue the replication from the source, means he can just able to do a commit failback from the source. So if he has done a commit failback, the Vembu VM backup will just exclude the particular VM from the replication job, and it will not just continue the incremental for that particular VM, and it will just leave that particular VM and it will just do the replication for other VMs which has been configured in that particular schedule. So that's all about the replica failback. So then we are just going to see about network mapping. Network mapping is a most important process in replication because if the user has configured a VM for replication and he is doing some incrementals or he's just continuing a replication process, once he is in a disaster scenario, if he is just doing a failover, the machine will be booted up through the application and it will be available to use, but the network will not be connected. So to achieve it automatically, Vembu is giving option to map your network from source to target host. If you're having, like say, if you're having 5 networks in your source and 3 networks in your target, so you can just map the source networks to the target networks. As you're seeing in the picture, here we have mapped VLAN 4 to VLAN 9 in target and VM network to VLAN 4 in target. So once doing a replication itself, Vembu VM backup agent will just do a network mapping to those VMs. So if it has been done in the replication process itself, means while in a disaster scenario, you can just put up the VM and you can just directly connect to the VM without any manual work. But if it is a single VM, the user can easily do it manually. But if you're having 10 or 20 in a schedule, if you're in a disaster scenario, you can't do it manually for those all VMs. So it will be better to have an automatic process to do these things. So comparing to network mapping, IP remapping is a most important process because network mapping is a process to you can just do it through the vSphere client, while in VMware case you can just do it through the vSphere client in a simple manner. But if you are just doing a IP remapping, that will be very hectic process because you need to just open up your booted up VM and you will need to just do a configuration of your IP based on your network. So instead of doing those things while configuring replication, I think you'll just have a lot of time to have your mapping rules, because in a disaster scenario you'll be in a very urgent manner, so you can't do it each and every VM in a very normal way. So while configuring a replication, you'll just have a lot of time to configure these rules. So it will be better to have these rules in a replication configuration. So if you're just giving, if like say in the like we are having a picture like we are having 103 series in my source, and I'll need to just mapping it to the 108 series in target. So I'll just give my source IP as 103 that star. So while doing a failover process, Vembu VM backup agent will just check the source VM's IP and it will just do a comparison with the IPs. If any one of the VM is mapping with that particular series, and the Vembu VM backup agent will assign the IP for the target VM. So once you have done your failover process, you can just directly ping that IP and you can just directly connect with through that IP. So the user don't want to do any manual work in your disaster scenario. So adding to that, the advantages of VMware replication. Uh, Mostly the better way is doing a agentless VM replication, because if you need to just have agents on each and every VM means it will be very hectic process. You can't do it one by one. So Wembu is giving a agentless VM replication, and because of doing a host level, uh, the VMware and vCenter environments has been protected in a effective manner, and the VM backup is using vStorage APIs. And obviously, Vembu VM backup is using changed block tracking enabled, so we can just do a true incrementals to achieve the RTO and RPOs in a better manner. And also, like I said previously, Vembu VM backup is always doing a application aware processing to achieve the consistency of the Microsoft applications in a particular VM. And like we have seen in the previous slides, the VMware hot add and SAN and also the LAN free transport modes will be useful to achieve a higher performance in replication process. So that's all about the replication and high availability of the VMs. So like we can just see a small demo about the product. I'm just moving to my console. So here you can just configure replication for a particular VM. So we are having a lot of hosts has been added already. So I'm just choosing this one. I'm going to just protect a particular VM from this host. So here you can just configure replication in every 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 1 hour to achieve your RPO, and you're having a application aware process options. It will be flexible options. You can just do check for your application writer status, and you can just ignore the status, or you need to just strict your status. And also you can just choose whether you need to just enable the log truncation for your Exchange machines, or you don't want, means you can just disable it. So that's all about the scheduling and application aware. Here you need to just give a target host informations. I'm just choosing 51 as my target, and the data store will be loaded from the option you have been chosen in the target server. And if it is 81, it will list the target data stores with the type of data store, which is VMFS, NFS, and if it is a vSAN, it will be shown as vSAN. So I'm just choosing VMFS, and the target VM will need to be created with some suffix name or some other name, because it will need to be differentiated with other machines, right? So for that, we are just having a suffix name of that particular VM, and the user will need to select the retention count. Now we are just having a 7 retention count because we are just maintaining the snapshots that will need to be properly handled. So we are just having a 7 retention count to maintain your restore points. And the other part is network mapping. So like I said earlier, you can just choose the networks to map it to the target host. I have chosen VLAN 9 from the source, and I'm just mapping it to VLAN 4 in the target. So it has been configured. So then once you have configured network mapping, you can just do a IP remapping. So each and every rule need to have a name to that rule, and you can just have a mapping informations for that particular rule. And for a particular replication schedule, you can just add more than one rule. Because if your VM, each and every VM, you are having a 4 VMs, 2 will resides on 103 series and 2 will be in 105 series, means you can just add more than one rule for that particular schedule. So finally, I need to just give a name for a replication process. So once I have done with my thing, I can just run replication process. To show a quick demo of replication process, I have already configured 2 different replication process, and we can just see the disaster scenario for these 2 VMs. If I'm having a VM which has been already done replication, I can just do a failover process for that particular VM. So here I'm just having the options to failover my VM, and I can just do a finalize, that is permanent failover or undo failover, and we can just do a failback. So now I'm just going to do a failover. I'm just choosing the timestamp to boot up my machine. So the target machine is available in 102.51, that is named as Windows 2012 R2 Exchange Machine Replica Check. So this is the VM, and this is having 3 recovery points to achieve your recovery. So like we have seen here, you can just have 3 recovery points. And I have chosen the latest one, and I'm just booting it up through my failover process. Here we are seeing the process of doing a failover. So this has been powered on. The failover process has been completed successfully, after done the IP remapping, the machine has been booted up. So you can just use the VM directly. So this will be in less than a second. We are just doing these process, so you're not just having any downtime in your disaster scenarios. And now we have done failover process for that particular VM. So we are just having a option to do. We are not having any other VMs to do failover, so we are just not having that failover option. Now we are having a finalized failover option for that particular schedule, and already the VM has been booted up, so it is showing the VM is in powered on state, and now we are just having an undo failover permanent. If you're choosing undo failover, it will be said that the changes done in the target virtual machine will be last and after undoing failover. So if you're doing undo failover, the Vembu VM backup will just do revert of snapshot, and it will just delete all the changes which has been done in your target VM, and it will just switch to the replication mode. If you're choosing a permanent failover and you are doing a permanent failover, the Wembu VM backup will consolidate all the recovery points which has been created here, and it will just do a boot of your VM to use from the DR host itself. And failback option is to do failback to a new location to achieve your business continuity from that new location. So already I have said earlier, I have done a fail back for a particular VM to show a quick demo here. So I have already done a failback for this particular VM, and here you can just do undo failback or commit failback. So this is a process to do undo failback. If you are doing an undo failback, the VM which has been created in the target host uh, will not have any effect in the failback, and it will just move to the failover state. From the failover state, you can just do undo failover, and you can just move to the normal replication state. So you can just do continue with your replication process. So that's all about the demo, and I think we have covered everything.
Thank you, Manikam. That's really very much informative session. And as I said earlier, this session is recorded. So if anyone of you need a recorded copy of this session, feel free to email us at vembu-sales@vembu.com or vembu-support@vembu.com. Or if you have any questions regarding this session, feel free to post it now. We are happy to answer your questions. So it's time to answer your questions. So if you got any questions, please feel free to post it on the question box. Let's check it out. What are the questions received so far? So here we got a question like the very first question would be like when we do a failback, do we need to manually assign the IP address or how it will be handled? The failback IP assigning handled in Wembu's VM replication failback.
Yeah, yes. Uh, because if you're in a if you're in a disaster scenario, if you're just going to a failover or failback, you'll be in a hurry. So you'll not to have time to configure your IP or network on that time. So to give a solution to this, Wembu VM Backup is doing network mapping and also an IP mapping. So while configuring the replication itself, you can just do a configuration for network mapping and also for IP mapping. So if you have configured those two things, Vembu VM Backup will take care of those two things, and it will just create, it will map the network while doing a failover process, and also it will just do a IP remapping process, which has been given by the role while configuring the replication. So you don't want to worry about the IP mapping and network mapping in case of failover or failback. So for your question, Vembu will take care of all those things if you have configured the rule for IP mapping while doing a replication itself.
Thank you, Manikam. That clarifies well for the question. And we'll go for the next question. Will there be any retention happening for VM replication?
Yeah, that's fine, Manoj. So while doing a replication process, the replication process will need to be done incremental process. So it will need to be we are just having every 15 minutes of RPO time. To achieve RPO of 15 minutes, we are just giving a schedule for each and every 15 minutes. So while having these kind of schedulings, if you're not just having any retention operations, the target will just grow with the data which has been sent from the source. So to maintain the extended data growth in the target, we are just doing a retention operations in the target. So now right now we are just maintaining the 7 recovery points in the target. So it will be consolidated, merged once the other snapshot has been recovery point has been comes into the target host successfully. We'll just consolidate the first one incremental with the full. So it will be obviously maintained as a normal retention process in the target host. So you don't, the user don't want to worry about the retention process in the target.
Okay, great. So it means like we do have our retention with Wembu's VM backup. So that answers the question. And here we go for the next question. While doing failback, will be provided with an option to select a specific recovery point?
Yeah, obviously, you can just do choose a particular timestamp to do your failover process. So if you have chosen a particular restore point, the Wembu VM backup will just do a boot of your VM in that particular timestamp itself. So you don't want to have any data which has been transferred after that particular timestamp. So it will be the data will be clear for that particular timestamp.
Thank you, Manikam. That clarifies well. We still keep receiving questions, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. So what we do is like we will get in touch with you individually with an elaborated answer for your question through our support team. Once again, I would like to mention that this session is recorded. So if anyone of you need the recorded copy, please feel free to send us an email at wembu-sales@wembu.com. Thank you all for joining this session. Have a nice day.